Most of them are simply a political attack. So, for example, any of his personnel appointments, those types of things go through the Vacancy Act. President Trump has the ability to ultimately nominate and appoint some positions with advice and consent of the Senate, but they all serve at the pleasure of the president. The travel ban and any of those policy-related issues, the Muslim travel ban, for example, has already been determined constitutional by the Supreme Court, so there's really nothing there to investigate. The only thing that you read off of that list that may be rationally related is impeachment. But let's talk about that for a second, Liz, because impeachment under the Constitution is really the separation of powers that can determine whether or not the president is fulfilling his constitutional obligations or has subverted those. But it has to be for a purpose of high crime or misdemeanor. So basically, in articles of impeachment, if the Democrats were to file those at this point, there's no actual legal basis. It would, again, literally just be a political tactic. But we know that even if they file articles of impeachment, there's no legal basis. So the Senate, which is under even more, it's +4, depending on the outcome of some of these recounts for the Senate. And so the Senate, by a supermajority, by a 2/3 majority, is not going to actually convict at trial President Trump for anything when there's not a sufficient legal basis to actually remove him. So any of the things that you just read, while some of them may ultimately give Congress some information, that doesn't actually allow them to actually do anything with their investigation, such as contempt or even refer to the Department of Justice for any further action.
Right. In other words, it's all just a big political show. It's a political sham, like you said, shenanigans. What is the best recourse for the president? Because we actually know that the Democrats are serious about this because they've tried to issue 64 subpoenas. That's the number just through September, not even the last 2 months of this year. And House Republicans, who are in the majority, have blocked those from becoming a reality here. But the Democrats certainly intend to follow through on this threat. What's the best recourse for President Trump so that he's not bogged down in fighting these subpoenas in the judiciary for the next 2 years?
Yeah, well, the best thing, and what I anticipate that he'll likely do, is assert executive privilege. And that particular privilege, while a lot of Democrats will say, oh, well, he's just hiding behind that, there's a very good legal rationale for that. And it's because he has Article 2 executive authority. Article 2 is the section in the Constitution that provides the president with his enumerated powers. And those powers he has separate and apart from congressional oversight to an extent, or even judicial. That's why we have a separation of powers. So only the judicial branch is only vested to determine if he acted according to his power, not whether or not Congress or the judicial branch agrees with it. It's very different between what he can do versus what he should do. So when we're talking about executive privilege, that covers his policy decisions, that covers who he decides to put in some of these offices. It would be the same thing as if Congress were to try to impeach Justice Kavanaugh simply because they disliked the president's choice. That's why the Senate has advice and consent, and the fact that they did consent, they went through that process and there was no legal basis for impeachment.